Okie Bluebirds, Niitaniko Cutjaw, and welcome back to the series on my channel known as the Media Reflection, where I discuss various media. For this media reflection, I'm going to be discussing BTS and the recent news concerning how their mandatory military enlistments for the South Korean Army were postponed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos for the media reflection, and if you would like more BTS commentary, send me an email or leave a comment about any suggestions down below. So for those who have been living under a rock, BTS is a wildly popular septet from South Korea who have accomplished many milestones for Asian entertainers and non-Western pop acts across the globe. Now, being citizens of South Korea, the members of this group were of course still held to the mandatory countrywide military enlistment for men. And although BTS themselves had absolutely no problem with this, a very vocal portion of the fandom began lamenting the possibility that any of the members would have to serve in the military. Personally, I didn't understand what the problem was with them doing this, but a lot of the army, the fandom name is Army, by the way, interestingly enough, did. It seemed as if most of the army who protested the members serving held anti-military sentiment and took issue with the members not being able to sing and dance as easily if they were to enlist. When I heard how people were insisting that the South Korean government rethink making BTS serve, I was surprisingly annoyed. I mean, just because serving in your country isn't respected, that doesn't necessarily mean that the military in general is a deplorable thing. Like I said in my earlier video about why most Americans despise the U.S. military, which is listed below in the description, the concept of having a military is supposed to be to protect the people and the land those people reside in. Now, in the case of the U.S. military, our military here in this country is an aggressor, and the government uses it to extend U.S. imperialism around the world. So the U.S. military, as well as many militaries around the world that behave similarly, isn't respectable, and sadly, many people project their dislike of America's military upon the militaries of other nations. For those who don't know, the U.S. military and the South Korean military are working together. That's why there are U.S. military bases in South Korea. This, and also to eliminate the possibility of South Korea ever attacking America. So, being aware of the questionable actions and mere existence of the U.S. military, many American Army proclaimed that it would be a tragedy to have BTS anywhere around the U.S. military. Of course, American armies weren't the only nationality unhappy with the South Korean mandatory service law, but they were among the loudest in the sea of opposition. I honestly thought the South Korean government was just going to ignore all these protestations and have a member of the group enlist right away. But to my honest surprise, the SK government decided to postpone the law for the group. I was a bit surprised because I didn't think the law was going to give BTS special treatment like that. I mean, after all, there are 4 members of the South Korean boy band EXO who are actively serving in the South Korean military right now. But I wasn't at all stunned because I understand that BTS as a singular entity is responsible for bringing millions of dollars into the South Korean economy and to an extent put the country on the map on an international level. And apparently to the South Korean government, making money is more important than upholding valued traditions and social requirements. I'm not necessarily criticizing this is just an honest observation. Now, the members of BTS still have to serve, just not right now. But what I believe is the most interesting part of this is the desperation that even the government felt to keep these 7 handsome men from having to don those military uniforms so soon. In South Korea, serving in the military is respected, but for many countries in the world, like America, it's the exact opposite. America is only one of many countries, though, whose civilians dislike its military, so surely this anti-military sentiment partly inspired the overprotective army around the world to vocalize their disagreement with BTS having to serve. Of course, though, South Korea is a far more respectable nation to serve than the U.S. See, most people were forgetting several things here. First of all, South Korea actually has something called celebrity soldiers. Celebrity soldiers are celebrities who are actively serving their 2-year mandatory enlistment and who are allowed to have a few more freedoms than average non-celebrity soldiers. For example, many celebrity soldiers are allowed to perform in front of actual crowds and receive fan mail. Schumann from EXO actually attended an EXO concert soon after he finished boot camp. A lot of celebrity soldiers even produce music while actively serving. And some celebrity soldiers, such as Kaisang from the first generation K-pop group Groove Overdose or G.O.D., even have the luxury of gaining some weight in this short span of time. Nextly, the South Korean government, under normal circumstances, isn't going to intentionally thrust a well-known celebrity headfirst into danger. Yes, it's the military, and the military isn't entirely safe by design, but do people really believe that South Korea is going to put any member of their top boy group on the front line? Highly unlikely, albeit not impossible. Really, enlisting would not mean being completely cut off from the world, although it's true that the members would be unable to carry out their usual schedules as K-pop stars, and also that joining the military is a fairly serious thing regardless of what job you have or how brief you're in it. Although extremely rare, almost to the point of being non-existent, there have in fact been instances in which soldiers in training die while still in boot camp. Like I said, it's very, very rare, but it does happen, and it proves that becoming a part of the military is no joke. So taking these two critical points into consideration, I can see how an avid fan and a political figure financially invested in the country would prefer to postpone BTS's enlistment. Surely enough, that's what happened too. This just proves that money really does talk, huh? But with all this being said, perhaps there is in fact a disconnect between Korean society and the honor of serving in the Korean military. If you watched my previous video about the military that I mentioned earlier in this video, many citizens who don't have general respect for the country also don't respect the military enough to enlist. And aside from a few racial and cultural differences, South Korea, in a sense, honestly isn't too different from America in many ways. Those of you who watched the other video will understand what ways I'm actually referring to. Despite whether or not this is actually a real factor in the anti-military stance many army had, I never thought it was a bad thing to have a BTS member serve for their country, especially since they themselves had no issue with it. So it was a bit embarrassing when some army had a problem with it. But obviously someone in the South Korean government also had a problem with it. But what do you all think of this? Leave your comments down below. And with that being said, I've cut y'all. This is the Bone Thread, and I'll see you all in the next video.